Welcome to the Two Robbies podcast. Sometimes these special days, these special moments in football that call for emergency action, and the breaking news of the day in a historic day, Friday, August the 27th, is one of those days. Some stunning news, a developing story of the last 24 to 48 hours. Cristiano Ronaldo returns to Manchester United 12 years after he left for world record beater Real Madrid. I'm joined on the podcast, not by Musty, he's away for the weekend, but I'm delighted to say we're joined by a contributor to the show, Danny Higginbotham, who started his career at Manchester United, knows Cristiano Ronaldo, seen him up close and personal, played against him 7 or 8 times, and can tell us something about his development and just what stunning events we've had over the last 24 hours. Dan, can you quite believe where we are with this?
No, I can't. It's incredible. It's my brother's birthday today, so we'll be made up that that Ronaldo's gone back to United on this day. But it looks as though he was going back to Manchester, but the blue side, not the red side, and it's just how quickly it happened. I was following it all and everything that was being said, and all of a sudden, you hear Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you hear his press conference. It's very different than Pep Guardiola's, and all of a sudden the tide just started to change. And, then you hear some reliable people coming out and saying he's going to be joining Manchester United. And then before you know it, it's on their media account that he's joined. And it's an incredible signing. I think you look at his ability on the pitch and, he's quite rightly mentioned in one of the greatest ever players ever to play the game. People talk about him being 36, but he's just the way he's taking care of himself, the goals speak for himself, the ability that he still has. He's probably really still at a point where he's 29, 30. And I think the effect that he's going to have on the younger players as well at the club. I look at someone like Ronaldo, to be playing at the level that he's playing at the age that he's at. He lives and breathes football, and he's going to bring that into the dressing room at Manchester United, which is already, a very professional dressing room. He's just going to elevate that up another level as well. And I think it's a great signing, not just on the pitch, but off it as well.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. And I think, back in the day, Manchester United have always had an iconic figure. They've always been in for the biggest players in the world, wherever they are. And in Cantona springs to mind, and then the Beckhams and the Giggs and the Scholes, the Brian Robsons. They've always had those star qualities. So is it a credit to Manchester United and the ownership that they've actually got this done, that they've landed him? Because it's a huge signing, not just for what he brings to the team, but I think to the football club, Dan, it takes it to another level. Manchester United are the biggest football brand out there, and having Cristiano Ronaldo just takes you to another level, just keeps you on people's lips, just keeps you in people's mind. And I think that's hugely important for a club like Manchester United, regardless of what's happening on the pitch. I've always said it's a better Premier League when there's a better Manchester United.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that we've seen over recent seasons has been that we've heard a lot of talk about players potentially going to Manchester United and then it just falling flat and not happening. And I think if you look at the business that they've done this season, you look at Varane, you look at Sancho, and you look at Ronaldo, they've gone out and got the job done. And I think one of the frustrations for United supporters over recent seasons is that to a certain extent they've been left behind with some of the other signings of the top clubs. There's been no real method behind the signings that they've made. Whereas if we look at signings that they have made recently, you obviously take Ronaldo out of that equation, but he's a special player. Majority of the players, younger players, not quite at the peak yet. And there's sort of an identity to the team going forward. And I just think when you sign someone like Ronaldo, I think the effect that he can have on the likes of Rashford, the likes of Greenwood, the likes of Sancho, I think it's going to be a huge effect. The fact that he still has the ability, he's not coming just for a payday. He's a player that wants to still win things. You can see his hunger, even when he was playing last season for Juventus. He's demanding of his teammates. And I think all top clubs have that. Robbie, you played against the top Manchester United teams, and I did as well myself. And the demands that each of those players puts on their teammates is what drives them on. And I think with someone like Ronaldo, he's going to demand that from his teammates. And that can only be a good thing, because then you're going to have players that are going to be dragged along with him, which is going to be brilliant. Or you're going to have players that are going to be left by the wayside because they haven't got that mentality, I guess, to be in a Premier League fight to actually win the title.
I think it's a really good point, mate. And it's a point made out of Musty and I had this discussion maybe a week or two ago, I think, previewing the season. And he's been quite harsh on Ollie, saying, I'm not sure Ollie's a man who can push this team over the line. You know, the great managers, the Klopps, the Peps, you know, get the job done. Tuchel we've seen at Chelsea. And they push, they drag a team over the line to get it won. And I said to him, I kind of take what he's saying. I think we've got to wait and get an Ollie team that is good enough to be pushed over the line. And we're starting to get there now, and I'll get your view on that in a minute. But more than that, the point I made, Dan, was, and you've just hit on it, the great Manchester United teams were nasty against each other. Not just nasty against you, the opposition. I've seen arguments going on with players at Manchester United where other players were almost in tears because they weren't doing the job, and they pushed each other along. And it's a really interesting point you make here, because I think the biggest thing Cristiano Ronaldo brings, and the goals will be important, but I don't necessarily think lack of goals will stop United getting where they want to.
I agree.
Mentality. That he won't allow a draw at Southampton last weekend. He will demand that we win that game. He will demand of his group this weekend on Sunday that we go to Wolves and we get 3 points, because he's won titles, Dan. He's won 7 of them, I think, since he's left. He's won Champions League. He's won Ballon d'Ors. This guy is a winner, and he hasn't given 2 years to go, oh, come United, we'll win a few games, we'll lose a few games to some lower teams. I don't think he's going to have that. And I think the single biggest thing he brings is a mentality. And you add Varane to that, obviously a serial winner in Real Madrid and for France, and all of a sudden there's different makeup to that Man United dressing room.
There is, and I go back to when I was a younger player, and you know, and I trained with the first team for quite a while there. And as a young player, you're a sponge, so you just want to soak everything up. You don't open your mouth; you just listen to the senior players. And the amount of times you would hear the senior players saying that the training sessions were harder than a lot of the games at the weekend, and it was so true because of how they trained. It was absolutely incredible. And you're quite right when you talk about the top managers, the Guardiolas, the Klopps, you know, Ferguson's over the years as well, where they can drag that team over the line. But if you look at Liverpool when they won the Premier League, Klopp was magnificent for them, but they had players that would drag that team over the line. Your Hendersons, your Van Dijks, your Robertsons,
Milner,
and that's Milner, another prime example. And I just feel that that's something that United need to have more of, because there's going to be times when there's a plan in place when they're on the pitch, and maybe Solskjaer can't get his message across to the players. The players have to take it in their own hands. And when you play against the top teams that I played against when I was playing, whether it be United at the time, whether it be City, whether it be Arsenal, there was in-game managers that knew when to change the game and what to do about it. And I just think there's a player like Ronaldo, he has that experience. And it's something that I think it's going to really help the team, because the most bizarre thing about it was that after the great result they had against Leeds United, going to Southampton last week, it was something that I looked at and I thought to myself, it wouldn't surprise me if they drew here. And that a lot of the time is if plan A doesn't work, what's your plan B? And at times players have to take that upon themselves to actually go and say, right, okay, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to try and fix it. And I just think Ronaldo, what he brings, I'm not saying he's going to play week in, week out. And I'm not saying, like you've quite rightly said, that he's not necessarily going to be the top goal scorer. United's problem isn't that they lack goals. They score goals. You look at the embarrassment of riches they've got going forward now. Greenwood, Rashford, Sancho, Cavani, Pogba, Fernandes, Ronaldo. It's absolutely incredible. It's just making sure that some of these draws that they've had can be turned into wins. And I think when you have a player like Ronaldo, in a game which is looking and you're thinking it's quite a dull game, it's not going their way, he can create something from nothing.
Yeah, I've got to play devil's advocate, Dan, because it's not, a Manchester United loving. Ronaldo's a great signing for the football club, for the league, for the global brand of Manchester United. Let's look at what could be some of the downsides. Could he, and I don't particularly buy into this, but some are suggesting, could he hinder Mason Greenwood's development? Could he affect the dressing room, become the big guy, and all of a sudden it affects others? Pogba, I know he plays with Bruno, and Bruno had a big say in him coming to the football club, but could he affect, we've seen big players and sometimes in big dressing rooms, and some of the lesser players can go within themselves, might not be the same. Is there a chance that he could disrupt the dressing room at all? I mean, he's on a ton load of money.
Yeah.
that you know, sometimes a game can have an effect if things aren't going well?
There's always the chance that could happen, but you hope that it's a scenario where, well, what Ibrahimovic did when he came to the club. You know, you hope it has that effect. You know, you could see that he was the leader in the dressing room. You could see when he joined the club that it's a strange one, but like growing up myself, going to watch Manchester United all the time, there was these players that, like your Cantonas, they wore the shirt and it didn't weigh heavy on them. And I just think a player like Ronaldo, he's gonna really enjoy all of that. And I think that the younger players, they will learn from him. He's been at the club before, he's a club legend. And you hope that it goes the other way, which is, right, okay, look at what he's done in his career. Look what he's still achieving in his career. Let's jump on board with what he's doing. Because sometimes when you see legacies at football club, quite often it's started by one manager or one player that can just be the finishing piece of the jigsaw. You go back to Cantona when he signed. Look what he did for the young players, you know, the class of 92.
Yeah.
It was an absolute godsend what he did for the younger players. So you would hope that's going to be the case for Ronaldo. One of the things that I would say when we're talking about the signing of Ronaldo, I still feel that the midfield positions are an area of somewhat concern. You know, you go back to the Southampton game last week, and the ball wasn't recycled quick enough. It wasn't moved quick enough. And I just feel
at the level is he now?
He's been an incredible player, Robbie. But I look at him, I look at Fred in particular, and good defensive players. But you need those players on the ball who are going to say, right, you cleared the ball, well, it's coming straight back at you. And I have no indications. I have nothing. I don't get any information. I know as much as anybody else. But it wouldn't surprise me when I look at that team, if they're not quite finished the business yet, maybe in that central midfield role. That's
interesting. I get your point, and I was doing some notes today about Man United, and I kind of thought the Ronaldo thing is great business, and there's going to be a huge fanfare around him, and I think they're talking about Newcastle possibly in his first game. But you'll now put a bit of pressure on Ollie now, because all of a sudden, like, he's got to start delivering it. And one of my thoughts was, interesting that you mentioned, I think, about that class of 92, and we talk about Cantona, but there was Robson, there was Steve Bruce, there was Dennis Irwin, there was good, solid pros around those kids who developed them. I think Ronaldo can be that guy. I think Marcus Rashford can benefit from him, become a more hungry forward. I think Mason Greenwood can learn about the discipline of being a top-class professional, week in, week out. Martial, if he stays around the football club, I think Paul Pogba's ability to dominate games on a regular basis, I think people will get that from him. So I don't necessarily see that as much of a problem. When we talk about the team, Dan, and this is where I'm kind of going, when I look at United now, you're probably talking about a defensive midfield player away from going, ready to go, that's it. Now, what I would say is not every Premier League winning team has always had the greatest players in the greatest positions. Sometimes I was thinking about Leicester. Leicester's back four in the main was Danny Simpson, Wes Morgan, Robert Huth, and Christian Fuchs. They won a title.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Maybe a Fred and a McTominay and a Matic between them have got to come up with big numbers, have got to come up with big games. But you can't have the perfect world and plug everything in and have everything right. Sometimes you've got to mould one or two. And some say Wan-Bissaka. To me, Wan-Bissaka is every bit as good a defender as Danny Simpson. On his day as a defender, he's every bit as good as Kyle Walker. He's just got to develop maybe a little bit of his more attacking game. So I kind of think that this Manchester United squad, to me, is now a challenger and should be close. And if it isn't close, if it isn't challenging, Dan, something's gone badly wrong.
I can't disagree with that, Robbie. I think, you know, we've spoken on numerous occasions about the building process at the club, about Solskjaer coming in and then taking the job and, you know, getting players out of the club, changing the mentality, the way they went about things and, you know, the way their transfer policies, you know, of signing players now that have longevity. So I think Solskjaer will be well aware, you know, you go in and getting Varane, who's arguably one of the best centre-backs in world football. You go in and getting Sancho, who potentially could well be one of the best forwards in the world as in terms of a winger. You're getting Ronaldo that is still up there and is an iconic player that has been one of the best in the world. So that in itself is going to put pressure on them. One of the things I would say, and this is where it becomes interesting for the opponents, is that if you look at the amount of times that teams will sit deep against United and they give United the width and they say, right, okay, well, sure, if you're going to come forward, Wan-Bissaka, you're going to come forward. We know that you're going to put balls into the box, but unless Cavani's playing, I don't see much of a threat.
Worried. Yeah.
All of a sudden, that dynamic changes now. Because if you've got Luke Shaw going down the side or Wan-Bissaka, these balls coming into the box that ordinarily would be, food and drink for centre-backs, all of a sudden Ronaldo's around now and has that Ibrahimovic effect as well, where it's like, we've got to be careful now. We might not necessarily want to let them get crosses in. And does that open up another space somewhere else on the pitch? But I agree 100% with what you're saying. The pressure is on Solskjaer now. There's no doubt about
that. As we stand today, and everybody was fit in this Manchester United squad, where are you thinking the team? De Gea, Henderson, De Gea for me.
Yes, I think so at the moment. I'd agree, yeah.
Back four, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Maguire, Shaw, pretty much picks itself, I think.
Yeah.
If fit and in the system, McTominay's my holder because I think he's more athletic, more responsible. Yeah. I'm probably going either side of him, Bruno and Pogba. If I'm going that sort of two ahead of one. If I'm going two, I'm probably putting Pogba next to McTominay and putting Bruno in the 10 position. Who takes your two wide positions? Who takes your central position?
I'm off the same page with you with the starting 8.
Yeah. Okay.
Now comes a difficult bit. I think at the moment you have to go Ronaldo through the middle. I think you have to go with that, and then I think dependent. And this is what I said when they signed Sancho. Sancho gives real good options because if you play him on the right, he's going to be an out-and-out winger because he keeps more of his width. And we know that Wan-Bissaka's not as attack-minded as Shaw. So he'll have the width and Wan-Bissaka can back him up.
Yeah.
If he plays on the left-hand side, we know that he's going to drift inside and that leaves a space for Shaw. So I think probably at the moment, you're probably going to be looking at Sancho and Greenwood, I would say at the minute.
As the two wide players.
Yeah, I think...
So if Rashford's fit...
Yeah.
Does Rashford come in and say, well, maybe instead of Greenwood?
I think it all depends of the form that players are in because the amount of questions that you get asked, well, if X, Y, and Z go and sign this player, well, where's he going to fit in? Yeah. Well, whichever way you want to look at it now, it is a squad game. Yeah, what it gives now, whoever's not going to be playing, what United have now, which they haven't had for a number of years, is they have game changers on the bench. Yeah. For a long time, you and me could probably sit down together 2 days before a United game and we could name the starting 11.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of this now, all right, the back four, as you quite rightly said, picks itself. You want the back four to pick itself.
Yeah.
But then going forward, you want that element of surprise. And if you see Sancho, Greenwood or Rashford on the team sheet, first of all, it's like, wow, they're going to create a problem. All right, what side they're going to play on? They're not going to stay on the side they're playing. They're going to drift around. They're going to have that ability. And I remember when Solskjaer first got the job and I said to him, what is your ideal? And one of the things was that he wanted at the time, he wanted to be able to play sort of a 4-3-3, dynamic, pace, turn defence into attack really quickly. Well, I tell you what, he's not far away from that now. Not far away from that at all. The attacking intent that he has at his disposal has to be up there with the best of them. And with that comes pressure. But if you're going to play for a club like Manchester United, not only have you got to be a good player, but you've got to be able to handle it mentally because you're expected to win all the time.
Absolutely. And that depth's going to be important, especially when I think that we're looking at Champions League games. You might have a Premier League sort of forward line and a Champions League line. Cavani could be really important coming in those games. Obviously, Rashford, Greenwood, Martial still part of the picture. I mean, do you see him possibly being the odd man out, Martial and maybe Dan James now? Might they let those two maybe move on? Yeah,
I could see someone like Dan James potentially going, but only on loan. Because obviously he's relatively young himself. Yeah. He's done okay at certain times, but he's still developing. Martial he must frustrate the life out of the management team and the coaching staff because he has. I mean, his performance
at Southampton last week kind of summed him up. Just like everything there you want, as you say, everything, Dan.
Yeah.
You know, speed, pace, technique, can finish, can be aggressive, and just looks disinterested to me. Looks like can't really be bothered today. And you can't win titles with that. That's not Manchester United, right? No. Can't be bothered. You don't know what you're going to get. You're hoping, your fingers crossed it's one of those days, and some days he has them, and he's a brilliant footballer. And other days you're like scratching your head going, really?
Yeah, the difference between the good and the great is consistency. You know, there'll be certain times where you play against these Manchester United teams, and they're not having the best of days. Yeah. But then there was always that player that you'd be like, where did that come from? And that wins them the game. And I think this United team now, it has a number of match winners. And when you look at, I think this is going to be the most exciting title race for a long time. Because I think probably for the first time in a long time, we're probably talking about 4 teams that can challenge.
Teams who can win
it.
Yeah. 4 can win it.
Yeah, I think 4 can win it. I think managers are obviously going to have a big part to play. I think there's been some incredible transfers done as well. And yeah, I just feel that it's not going to be 2 teams that run away with it. I think you get 3 quarters into the season, there's still going to be 4 teams that are like thinking to themselves, you know what, we can do this, we can win it. And it's just going to make for such an exciting season.
What's your gut tell you about where Manchester United can finish, will finish? Can they win the title?
Yes.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
I like that answer.
They can win the title. I think they can. Will they is a little bit of a different thing. The one thing that stops United, and I think we saw it last season at certain times as well, is the consistency. You know, it's sometimes the games that you expect them to potentially draw or lose, they win. The games you expect them to win, they end up losing. You know, look at Crystal Palace last season. I think there was West Brom, there was Sheffield United. Yeah.
They're good against the big boys, weren't they, Jeremy? Yeah. And then kind of didn't turn up against some of the lower teams. And
the thing is, when they're playing against the bigger clubs, it works perfectly for them because they can play on the counter attack. They don't have to dominate possession. It's when they have to dominate possession where they can have a little bit of a problem. You look at the game against Leeds United, opening game of the season. What a performance. Leeds United had more possession. And that's what United have got to do. They've got to turn dominance as in terms of possession into goals. And if they can do that on a consistent basis, then they'll be challenging. For me at the moment, Chelsea are my favourites. Then you know, it's a mixture of the 3 then, because they've all got good, bad and indifferent between the 3 teams below them.
Yeah, games against each other could have a big effect. Somebody who has had a big effect, Cristiano Ronaldo, moving to Manchester United. Just a couple of odds here to PointsBet Sportsbook, our partners who give us odds. Interesting, the Golden Boot top scorer, Romelu Lukaku, is still first at plus 270. But guess who's jumped in at second? Cristiano Ronaldo at plus 400 is now second favourite to win the Golden Boot. So the bookies think he'll play, he'll get enough games, and he'll get enough goals. So that's interesting that he's already got himself in second spot. And in terms of the title race, Manchester United is still 4th favourite, and they started the day at plus 800, but they've gone down now to plus 550. So there is a shift as though people are starting to think that there's a lot more value in Manchester United. Plus 550 is a thought that maybe they could lift the title as well. So whether Ronaldo plays enough games, whether he plays a big enough part, I think it's a season, Dan. Again, I'll get your sort of closing thoughts. I think it's a season where, on my notes for the weekend, I've put 2 things have got to happen for Manchester United this year: progress and silverware. I think he needs the 2. I think if there's enough progress without the silverware, it'll be okay. Like, we can see where he's going, a bit Klopp-like when he came to Liverpool, and we go again the next year. But I think if they don't land a bit of silverware, and that might be a domestic cup. Yeah. It just needs something for this group and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to prove they've won and start the hunger that's going to grow 2 titles, 2 back to Champions League, what United have always known and have always vied for in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look last season, they came second to Manchester City.
Second by distance.
I was going to say it's second by a distance. So they have to cut that gap. I think one of the things I look at is Manchester United, are they a better team than last season? Yeah, without doubt. Chelsea are also a better team than last season. Liverpool are a better team than last season. Manchester City, undecided whether they're a better team than last season. I know they brought Jack Grealish in, and I think he's going to be a star for them, and I think he's going to get better and better and better. But
they've got a great manager though, haven't they? They've got a manager who knows, so he balances up for maybe a few deficiencies that they might have in numbers.
But what United need the consistency, because if you look at it, they didn't finish in second and that distance behind Manchester City because of their results necessarily against the big clubs.
Yeah.
You know, if I remember right, I think they did the double over Manchester City, I think. If I remember right.
Against the top teams.
Yeah.
I know they lost 6 games at home, didn't they? And a lot of them were teams who were, should have got in bottom half of the table or mid-table.
So it's getting that consistency. But I agree with you. It's closing that gap to whoever it is. And also a domestic trophy and doing well in the Champions League. And I think if someone said that to Solskjaer, I think he'd be like, yeah, the pressure is on now. And I think with someone like Solskjaer, people talks about his lack of managerial experience. But people also forget he's dealt with pressure at a club like Manchester United when they were at the top of their game. So he knows what it's all about. He knows that he knows what's on the line. He's not going in there with his eyes closed this season. He'll be looking and going, you know what, got some of the players that I want, but that puts more pressure on me. 100% it does. And, he'll be hoping now that the players he's brought in thrive and are able to cut that gap then between what was second place to get them closer to first. If not, be challenging for the title.
Yeah, absolutely agree, mate. Listen, thanks, Dan, for jumping on this podcast. There was no Musto this week, but as ever, it was a pleasure to get you. And Ronaldo's back in the league. Great for Man United. I think great for us all. We'll keep an eye out how that goes over the next few weeks. And we'll be back on Sunday, August the 29th, when our other buddy, Tim Howard, another former Manchester United player, sure he's got some views on Ronaldo, and we'll review match week 3. This sees Liverpool take on Chelsea. Big game at Anfield, 12:30 Eastern Time on Big NBC. But for now, I'm Earle. He's Higginbottom. Together, I'm Robbie. He's Danny. Thanks for watching and listening. Be safe. Stay healthy. It's good night from me. It's good night from him. Good night.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.